rollover. No, wait, I'd like to do a transfer. Can I get a distribution? Do you guys ever get confused on terminology when it comes to your different financial accounts and planning for retirement? Hi, I'm Garrett Ray, financial planner here at the Wealth Guardians and the Ray Financial Group.
And I'm Brice Payne, and you've entered The Vault, the Wealth Guardians video series on all things pertaining to retirement planning. In this episode, we're just going to go over some basic terminology that centers around retirement accounts. Out there, a lot of times people use the wrong terminology, and from time to time, not using the correct terminology can get somebody in trouble with the IRS because they said the wrong thing to their advisor. That's right. One thing I don't want you to do that's wrong is not click on those buttons down below there. That's going to let you subscribe to us so you can catch all future episodes of The Vault with Doug, Garrett, and myself going down the road. All right, so for this episode here, let's go ahead and start talking about, Garrett, basic terminology and how it differs from other terminology when we're in the world of our retirement accounts. So IRAs first?
Yeah, I mean, there's different language that we have kind of here. If you're not familiar with it, it can become confusing, or you may be talking to an advisor or seeing someone on YouTube or the radio or listening to them on the radio and they're saying all these things and you have no idea what they mean. But IRA, let's start with that, stands for Individual Retirement Arrangement. It doesn't actually stand for retirement account, believe it or not. And basically this is just an agreement, I guess I'll call it, that you have with the government where you have the ability to, in your working years, make contributions into this account. If it's going into a traditional IRA, then for that contribution, you get to take the same amount that you contributed as a deduction when you file your income taxes the following spring.
There you go.
So
pre-tax account.
Pre-tax account. Yep.
Tax deferred account.
That's right. So basically you're not paying taxes on your contribution when you make them, with the promise that you'll pay taxes later when you take the money out during your retirement years.
All right. So it's a easy account, tax deferred account. And then we've got Roth accounts. Roth accounts are kind of the opposite. Roth, ROTH, stands for the senator who proposed that type of account back in the 80s, I think it was. Senator William Roth from Delaware. So they named the account after him. Yep. Kind of the opposite of an IRA. A Roth account is another retirement savings account, but you do pay the taxes on it. But as long as you don't touch the money until you're 59 and a half, you don't have to pay taxes on the growth of the account when you eventually take distributions from that. So that's a Roth account. And then we also have ESP. If you ever hear somebody mentioning ESP, employer sponsored plans is what that stands for. We're all familiar with at least, hopefully most of us are familiar with at least one of those. That's anything that is a retirement account through your employer. You've got pensions, profit sharing plans, 401ks, 403bs, thrift accounts or TSPs.
Yep, for a savings plan.
Simple if you're self-employed, simple or SEP IRAs. Those are usually pre-tax accounts, but don't get confused. There can be versions of those that are Roth versions of those, like a Roth 401k. So, and people can have both and they can have multiples of any of those as well. So that's what a qualified plan, an employer-sponsored plan. Qualified plan.
A qualified plan.
You hear people mention that, and somebody says, and I've had people ask me this, Brice, you just use the term qualified plan. What is a qualified plan? Why do they call it that? Qualified plan is anything that is a tax deferred account, like the IRAs or the 401ks that we were just discussing. Think of it as this. It's qualified for a tax deduction.
Correct.
If it's that type of account, then I don't know if that's really why they call it a qualified plan, but that's the way I always remember it is if it's qualified for a tax credit this year, the year that I make a contribution, it's a qualified plan.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. So that's what that means. Now, the next one is contribution. And people will get contribution mixed up, Garrett, with some other terms.
Yeah, and contribution, it's easy to get mixed up because there's different contributions limits. There's different types. There's different contribution limits per account based on your age. So a contribution is essentially anything going towards, it can be either your own individual contribution or if you have an employer-sponsored plan like Brice just got done talking about, a portion of your total contribution can actually come from your employer. So if we're talking about like a 401k, oftentimes they'll have language, hey, we'll match dollar for dollar up to 5% of your annual salary in contribution. So the idea being that if you contribute 5% of your annual salary towards your 401k, your employer's chipping in 5%. So 10% of your total salary per year is going towards this 401k. Very powerful savings tool, and it can, of course, compound for you over time. But understanding your contribution limits per account,
That's huge.
and specifically if your employer is going to give you any help, is very huge. We're always going to encourage people, if you have an employer contribution, take full advantage of it if you absolutely can.
At least up to the match.
At least up to the match. Yep.
If you can contribute more, great. But basically, that's what a contribution is: money that you're putting into an IRA or 401k or a Roth account. And there's, as Garrett said, there's limits on those based on how old you are, what your income is, those kind of things, how much the employer can contribute versus how much you can contribute. But that is what a contribution is. And then we've got vested. And this one will kind of sideswipe some people. A lot of times vested is not relevant to you, but sometimes it is, which means that if your employer has put money into your 401k for you, and you've contributed to your 401k, well, the money that you've put in is always yours. You can always take it out. There might be penalties or taxes for taking it out. I won't go down that road, but it's yours.
Yep.
The employer-sponsored portion is not necessarily always yours. Your employer might have put a rule in there that you don't get to touch the employer portion of that until you've worked for the company for so many years, or until you've reached a certain age. Or, so sometimes people are like, well, my employer over the years has contributed X amount of dollars, so I'm going to leave this company now and take that somewhere else. And your employer might have a rule written down that says, oh, but you didn't work here for 10 years, so you only get a certain percentage of what we put in, even though you thought it was yours all this time. That's basically what vested means. Not every plan has that, but if it does, just be aware that that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, and an example could be that your employer would have you vest at 25% per year for 4 years, meaning that you would have to stay with that company for at least 4 full years before any portion, or at least that percentage that was outlined by your employer, is allowed to stay in your 401k should you leave the company.
Right. Yep. Right. And then the next one, terminology that we want to make sure that we're using properly is distribution. This one gets, people use this term in the wrong way sometimes.
Yep.
Distribution is when you are taking money out of your retirement account, whether it's a 401k, an IRA, or a Roth. You're taking it out of that and putting it into your checking account. You've had a check written to your name, or the funds have just been wired into your checking account. That money is no longer in a qualified account or a Roth account. It is now a distribution. That is what a distribution is. Let's make sure we're using that properly, because it is different than a
rollover or a transfer.
There you go. Yep. And we'll get to those in just a second. But before that, let's talk about conversions.
Yep.
People get this term confused too with contribution.
Yeah. So can you convert between different types of accounts? Can I convert from a traditional IRA over to a Roth IRA?
That's usually what a conversion is going from an IRA to a Roth.
Yeah, normally you would want to convert.
You would do it the other way.
Yeah, you would do it the other.
Even can.
Yeah, but you basically, can you convert? Yes, you can convert. And then the other kind of fun factoid is that even though there are limits on how much you can contribute to an IRA in a given year, there are no limits on how much you can convert. What's the catch though? The amount that is converted from traditional IRA to Roth monies, that is taxable as income in the year of the conversion. So hypothetically, if you had $1 million IRA, you could convert the entire $1 million in 1 year, but to Uncle Sam and the IRS, that makes it look like you earned $1 million of income in that year. So unless you've got a lot of money set aside to pay the taxes off, then you could have kind of a really hard tax calculation there.
Yeah, and people might say, well, why? What's the point of converting? If it's already in an IRA, why would I want to move it to a Roth? Well, mathematically speaking, it can make sense for people if they've got too much money in an IRA or 401k. Yep. It might make mathematical sense for them to convert a portion of that at some point, not necessarily all in 1 year, maybe over a certain period of time, to Roth accounts, particularly if you believe taxes are going to go up. Pay the taxes on it now when you think you're in a lower tax bracket. If you believe you're going to be in a higher tax bracket later, well, then you got your taxes on sale as a way of looking at it.
That's right.
But it does staying in the year that you do it. But that's what a conversion is. Key point, it is not a contribution. Let's not confuse those two terms. And there are no limits on conversions.
Yep.
All right. So now going to rollover. Just a moment ago, we were talking about distributions, and people will confuse the term rollover with distribution. Not the same thing by any means. As we said, a distribution is taking the money out of a 401k, IRA, or Roth and put it into your checking account, whereas a rollover, very specific term here, is you're taking money from an employer-sponsored plan and moving it over to a non-employer-sponsored plan, meaning an IRA, usually an IRA, could be done as a Roth too, but that gets a little bit more complicated. So you're taking money from a 401k to an IRA that is not an employer-sponsored plan. That is what we mean by a rollover.
Yep.
Different than a distribution and different than a contribution. It is not technically a contribution. The money was already in a qualified or tax-deferred plan, so you're not contributing more money to that kind of account. You're just moving it from the one that your employer had over to an IRA.
Sure.
That's a rollover. Yep. Right? You might hear terminology of 60-day rollover. Okay. 60-day rollover starts off as a distribution. You take the money, it's now in your hands, in your checking account, but you put it into or back into a qualified plan, an IRA, within 60 days. That wipes out the taxable event of having it gone into your own hands for 60 days.
Yep.
Can only do that once a calendar year. So make sure that you plan those out or time those the right way. We usually discourage people from trying to do that. I've seen it happen many times where somebody, for whatever reason, think, I'm going to take the money here. I'll just have them give me a check. And then at Brice, I'll be sure to put it into an IRA within 60 days. Something goes wrong. They lost count of the days or whatnot, and they didn't get it back into an IRA. Boom. Uncle Sam just triggered a taxable event.
Smacks you.
So let's make sure that's a 60-day rollover. There's also something called an ISR, an in-service rollover. What's that, Garrett?
In-service rollover, this is basically saying that you have an existing employer-sponsored plan, let's say a 401k, and you are a current employee of the company. But you've reached the agreed-upon age of 59 and a half that our government sets for us, and you get kind of a little bit more, I guess I'll say leeway, or you have more options available to you. One of them is the ISR, or the in-service rollover. And this says that even though I'm an existing employee at my current employer, I have the option to roll my 401k balance out to an IRA for either self-management or professional management because I'm thinking about retiring. So the entire purpose of 401ks, 403bs, those types of plans is to one day retire. The government knows that when people turn 59 and a half or older, they're starting to think about that more, and they give you the option to roll that money out without that 10% penalty that you get smacked with if you touch employer-sponsored plan money before you're 59 and a half. They put a 10% surcharge on there.
Yep, exactly right. You might ask, well, yeah, I don't remember that ever being a thing. Well, you're right. That didn't exist. In-service rollers didn't exist until after the 2008 financial crisis. A lot of people lost a lot of money in their 401ks. They weren't allowed to take the money out because they were still working with their employer. And people lost a lot of money, and there were some lawsuits that happened. Yep. And Uncle Sam said, you know what? People should be able to have the ability to take money out. If you're 59 and a half, you're closer to retirement. You don't want to take all the risk with your investments that you used to. Maybe your 401k doesn't give you the right type of investment options in there. Sure. So you want to take that money out. And Uncle Sam said, moving forward, we're not going to force employer-sponsored plans to allow people to take in-service rollover. So you might not have that option at your plan. But Uncle Sam said, third-party administrators of these 401ks, be warned that if you do not allow the employees to take in-service rollovers at 59 and a half and they ask for them, and you say, no, that's not an option, they will have the right to sue you if they lost more money than what they wanted to. Yeah. And so that's why most employers say, okay, you can take the money out. Though we do find some where they still don't have that option, particularly the smaller plans. Yep. So you might not have that, but that's what an ISR, in-service rollover, is. Now, Garrett, another term that people oftentimes confuse with rollovers is transfers.
Yep. So transferring, that's basically just saying that you're moving from one account to another like account. So let's say that you have an IRA over at, I'll say, Edward Jones, but you want to establish an IRA over at Fidelity. How is that done? You basically just do an IRA to IRA transfer between the institutions of Edward Jones and Fidelity. That would involve you opening up a new account at Fidelity. Now, you've opened up that new account, but it's funded with $0. So then you would have to send the transfer request. Typically from Fidelity, they're going to request the money to be sent over from Edward Jones. Edward Jones would then honor their request. They would send either a partial transfer, meaning you only wanted to move some of the money from Edward Jones over to Fidelity, or in some cases, you would move the entire balance from Edward Jones to Fidelity. I'm not picking on either two of these institutions. I'm just using them as examples here for explanation purposes.
Yeah. And so I'm imagining some people out there saying, well, wait a minute, Brice, I've got to rewind this now because that sounds exactly what you just described a rollover earlier is. A rollover is money leaving an employer-sponsored plan over to an IRA or a Roth. A transfer, it's not an employer-sponsored plan where it's starting off. It's already an IRA or a Roth moving over to another IRA or Roth. Other than that, the terminology is the same. Just if it's a rollover, its starting point was an employer-sponsored plan.
That's right.
It's a transfer if the starting point was an IRA or a Roth.
Yep.
Plain and simple. All right. And then we saved the worst for last, RMD, required minimum distributions. You might have heard that terminology out there. If you have any kind of pre-tax account, 401k or IRA, you are required at age 73. And if you were born, was it Garrett, after 1960?
After 1960.
If you were born after 1960 or after, your RMD age is 75, not 73. That is when Uncle Sam forces you to start taking money out of those accounts. It's a percentage calculation based on how much you have in that account. And Uncle Sam wants to reap the taxes out of that. So you take out however much you have to, pay the taxes on it, and then you can reinvest that money, but it can't go back into an IRA or Roth at that point. Fun little fact is if you are that age, 73 or 75, and you are still working, you do not have to take RMDs from that active 401k. Now, if you have another old 401k out there, you do have to take taxes, take an RMD from that one. If you have IRAs, you have to take RMDs from that one. You just don't have to take an RMD from the employer-sponsored plan if you are still working with that employer.
Yeah, that's still active.
A lot of people don't know that, but there you go. Garrett, any other terminology out there we want to go over?
No, I mean, that was a pretty exhaustive list, and we're here at 18 minutes now, so I think we're good.
We're just here trying to give everybody the lowdown on what all these terminologies mean. All right, well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Wealth Guardians Vault series. Again, like and subscribe buttons hanging out down there for you to click on them at any point. Make sure you catch all the future episodes of the Vault with Doug, Garrett, and myself. As for this one, I'm Brice Payne.
And I'm Garrett Ray.
And this has been the Vault. Hey, it's Brice Payne with the Wealth Guardians. Thanks for watching our weekly series, The Vault. Do you know we also have a weekly radio show where we discuss all things retirement? You can listen to the Wealth Guardians radio show live on 94.5 WPTI in the Triad on Saturday mornings. But if you miss the live broadcast, you can also catch it on our YouTube channel or find us on your favorite podcast platform each Saturday morning. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you can get notifications when we release new episodes. Want you to remember, good retirement plans do not create themselves. We'll talk to you soon.